Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Beastcoast Pokemon. Today, I'm joined by James, Nekkra, and Wolfe, and we're here to talk about the 2024 European International Championships, the new largest tournament of all time. All four of us were actually there as competitors, and so it was a super fun experience. And why don't we just quickly go around and summarize how the weekend went, starting with you, James?
I mean, this weekend, I always love going to London. I can't lie. 2022 was a great experience for me. And this EUIC, I have mixed feelings about my results, but overall, I felt like pretty happy about my play. So got to see a lot of people, got to meet a lot of new ones. And yeah, just had a really good time regardless.
You should say how you did too, because I think people will probably think you did worse than you actually did with that description.
Yeah.
I went 11-4 in the final record. That's 7-2, 7 wins, 2 losses in day one, and 4 wins and 2 losses in day two, and ended up finishing 34th place, bubbling 2 spots for the top 32 prizing, which is kind of unfortunate for going 11-4 at this kind of event.
I'm so tired. Oh my god. I ate a lot of fish and chips. It was really, really good. I don't know. I feel like I've always had terrible experiences with food in London. So I've never been there while being pescatarian. I've only been vegetarian. So this was a better experience. I did pretty well. I'm happy with how I did. I would have liked to go further. I finished 13th overall with a record of 12 wins and 3 losses. I went 7-2 day one and then 5-1 day two. But even though like the finish isn't like it's a good finish, but I'm not like yay, like I got 13th, you know, but I am really happy with my play, especially day two. My day two schedule was like, frankly, really, really difficult. Like I played a ton of really good players, and overall, I'm just really happy with my play. And so even though the result isn't what I wanted, like, I mean, just like James, I also missed out on like the next placement on resistance, and the resistance system is just, for anyone who doesn't know, Pokemon uses a resistance-based system as tiebreaker. So let's say like there were like, how many people, like 12 or something people with like record of 12 and 3 wins, like 12 people with 12 wins or whatever. I don't know the exact number, but it was a lot, right? And 4 of them were going to make it into the top cut. And the resistance system is basically how many games your opponents won divided by how many games like your opponents played. And it seems like a good system until you realize that the Pokemon system for resistance doesn't include any games that were won on day one. It only includes games that were won on day two. So in the last round, I was paired against Arash, the 2013 world champion, who had a record of I don't know, like 11 wins, 3 losses, and then the like for my resistance, only 2 of those counted. So I feel like the system is so bad that like you would like, I don't know, when you mess around resistance, it's just like like I did well enough, but then I didn't, like it was like the system just wasn't like in my favor that day, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of discussion since those results have happened, like James, you bubbling, and Wolfe, you also bubbling out of top 8, that I don't know where you all sit on this before I get into my EUIC story, but to follow up on that, I feel like there should be an asymmetrical top cut where you are rewarding based on win-loss record. And I personally would love to see even just a little bit of extra CP to those players that did actually make day two. So instead of like playing out the whole day and then getting to a point where you're missing out on top 64 CP and you earned a spot to play in day two, you might even get like 5 or 10 extra CP just to bump it, to make it feel a little bit nicer that you did get an accomplishment being able to play in day two.
I think for a 15-round tournament, I wouldn't mind asymmetrical cut. I honestly think top 16 would also be like pretty solid as well. I believe there was only one XM4 result, an 11-4 that made the 16th seed, so I don't think it was like too bad. And let me just say, there are 3 different placements you could get as 11-4. You squeeze in the top 16, which is $3,000. You squeeze in the top 32, which is $2,000. Or you're like me and a few others who ended up getting top 64 CP. So you get potentially 30 more CP than someone who ended up going 6-3 in day one. You go positive in day two, and you just don't get anything other than that 30 CP. So
that's so bad. I didn't realize I didn't even think about like the 11-4 distribution. Yeah, that you could finish top 16, top 32, or top 64 is crazy. That's nuts. I like your solution, Rose. I definitely feel like either asymmetrical top cut or just a flat top 16 is good for tournaments this size. You can get a top 128, right? At 7-2, I'm pretty sure. Like, because there was more than 64 players in day two. So yeah, I think making day two and then getting like top 128 prizing feels not good.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about the tournament structure. So I was, one of those players who did make it through day 1 at 7-2, and then like I lost the first round. And I was like, well, what am I even playing for at this point? Like, I guess if you win all 5 after losing the first round, then you have a chance of squeaking into maybe top 16. But then at that point, I was like, it's like our tournaments are just so big now that the structure isn't optimized for it. For example, I think it's so silly that I went to Pittsburgh regionals, like went 6-3 there. Got 50 championship points because I was like one of the highest 6-3s. And then I got 20 championship points the day after from a midseason showdown. And then I went to San Antonio regionals where I went 10-4 and I only got 10 extra CP. So I walked away with more championship points from Pittsburgh from top 64 plus top 60 at the mid-season. I bubbled out of top 16 at San Antonio, right? So it was like, as a result, I literally walked away with 10 more points despite playing in the second day, winning 4 more games. And like, I think being a game away from like a record, that would be good enough for top 8. So if I could have it my way, I would, make it like record based rather than like top, the arbitrary like top 8, top 16, top 32. And I agree with your point, Rose. I think like it'd be nice if like there was a little bit more just to reward those that make it to day 2. Like it's a big accomplishment, right? Like 7-2 versus 6-3. There's something about how many amazing players go 6-3 at all these tournaments. And I've seen things thrown out, like even just like a custom promo card or something more. If I could have it my way, I think like each win that you have in day 2 gives you like more championship points as well. I'm not sure if the current system / software allows for that, but I feel like that would be, if I could wave a magic wand, that would be my fix. But yeah, I think it's like crazy that Wolfe went, 12-3 and like still couldn't play in the top 8 because that record is obviously crazy good. So yeah, I hope that like some changes are made for the next season, because like our tournaments have just like scaled up so exponentially in the last 2 seasons, and like the circuit, I'd say like the system isn't working as well as it used to.
Yeah, especially going like, well, if you lost in the 5th round of day 2,
yeah, I went
pretty
4-0.
far, yeah.
Lost to Alex Gomez. My losses that weekend were Oliver Escalin, like international champion, Flavio Lepidio, I think international runner-up, if I'm remembering correctly.
Champion.
It's the other way around. Flavio.
Sorry. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. And then Alex Gomez, international champion, and a whole host of other accomplishments. And I missed, like, those are my only losses. And I missed, top 8, which, like, of course, like, that's not the way the system works. It doesn't account for historical performances. But, like, yeah, like, all those players did extremely well. And, yeah, like, it wasn't enough. But, Rose, we haven't talked about your performance at EUIC yet. I feel bad. I don't want to jump over.
Well, my performance is not nearly as exciting as the 3 of you, because congratulations on making day 2. I was not with you. I ended up going 4-5 at this event, but I got a lot of valuable experience from it because I don't know how many people know this, but this was the first international championship that I got a chance to actually compete in since the system changed from nationals to internets. I've been on the broadcast for every single one outside of that, so I actually haven't had a chance to compete until now. So it was really exciting to be able to get a chance to get that firsthand experience as a player, to really feel that pressure that all of you feel every time you're playing in a day 1 to day 2, and just how intense every single one of those matches can be. Because the tournament was really hard. Like, I'm actually really proud of the fact that I went 4-5, because even just finishing the day felt like an accomplishment, dealing with the jet lag and even getting some of the wins I did and some really tough matchups. I was just really proud of being able to do that. Obviously want more for myself. I'm a perfectionist and I'm a deep competitor nonetheless, but still a fun experience. And I got a chance to see London and cheer all of you on when you were playing in day 2. So that was also really fun.
I think, for what it's worth, I think 4-5 is a tremendous accomplishment. Pokemon is an incredibly hard game, and like we've all had tournaments where we've gotten records like that is 4-5 or close to that. Like, I mean, I guess with the exception of Aaron, but like, we're like focused pretty much primarily just on competing. So coming in and going even against like with the jet lag and against such a stacked field, like Europe is I think the average player level in Europe is like, in my opinion, very, like, it might be one of the highest regions in the world. Like at an international level event, like going even is, in my opinion, extremely impressive. So like, it's just not something that I think like we should just be like, oh yeah, 4-5, like whatever. Like I think it's worth celebrating personally.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was definitely fun. And like, I'm excited to see all of the discussion as well, just about the tournament, because I feel like we haven't even had a chance to dive into what actually happened at EUIC, which is kind of incredible. Like outside of our individual performances, I feel like we ended up seeing a really interesting metagame develop over the course of like day 1 into day 2. And so I'm curious to hear about your thoughts kind of like what preparation were you doing heading into the event, and maybe anything that defied those expectations that you ran into when you were playing?
I knew I was going to use the Japanese balance stuff pretty early on. My goal for EUIC was to just qualify for Worlds, so I knew I just needed top 256. 6-3 was guaranteed that. So I was really happy when I was like 7-1 to start the tournament because I'd already kind of reached the baseline goal. But okay, well,
I had to cough. I drank the water wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so my expectations going into EUIC was that like I figured that team would have a huge target on its back. So, you know, I was debating, okay, well, do I want to like try something more off meta? Like Ursaluna was something that, like Aaron Trailer and Wolfe and I had talked about and identified as something with a lot of potential, but I just had no experience with it. And I was like, look, I want EUIC to be the tournament where I get my invites so I don't have to play for a few months and just go all in on focusing on Worlds. And so balance would still be good, but I figured a lot of the top teams would have ways to deal with it. And that was very true in day 2. Like I was running into teams that had like very well executed lines into it. Balance team still did really well, right? I mean, Alex Gomez finished in the top 4, for example. He had Gholdengo instead of Landorus. There were a couple of players in top 16 that were using kind of just the standard 6. But yeah, I didn't really make any modifications. I found that day 2 was really hard to play through because a lot of opponents just were like super well prepared. Like I ran into 3 different Fairy Terra Clear Smog Amoonguss, which is like the biggest nightmare for Raging Bolt, for example. So yeah, but I think most of the teams that did well at the tournament, I can't say I was like absolutely shocked by, but I believe there was an Okidogi in top 8, which was pretty cool.
There was an Okidogi in top 8. There was a Pheasantipity in day 2. Can we like talk about that really fast? That was a Pokemon that has never made a day 2 performance before, let alone being even in contention, I think, to like make a top 32. So I thought that was pretty spectacular, and it was quite the extreme performance that we saw from that Pokemon on Pato's team.
I lost to it. Well, he didn't bring it, but I lost to the team. That was my second loss on day 1. Yeah, it's a cool team. Like it was like Terra Bug Gastrodon, Terra Bug Excalibur, Magma Storm Heatran, like a bunch of Pokemon we hadn't seen very much. To answer your question, like my theory about this tournament was that it was going to be a very wide field. So I wanted to use a team that I thought like had really, really strong fundamentals and really good like varied forms of speed control. So I kind of focused around like Choice Scarf, Urshifu, and Tornadus for Tailwind and like Scarf pressure, and then using Amoonguss as an anti-trick room Pokemon that also just has a lot of utility. I thought my team was really, really good, and I like my prep was good too, but this was maybe the weirdest tournament I've ever played in terms of my opponent's teams. I went like round 1 Corviknight into round 2 Florges into round 3, like I think I might have gotten a standard team, but like pretty shortly after, maybe round 3 was the Enamorous Therian Wo Chen Iron Moth team, where I think I was literally the last round to finish, and there was like a huge crowd like watching the games, and like yeah, like it was like actually really hard to beat. This is a fun fact. Wo Chen one-shot my Amoonguss with okay, it wasn't one shot. It was at like 70%. I had Terra into water. Giga Drain critical hit me, and then Amoonguss just went bye-bye. And I have like some special bulk on Amoonguss, like you know what I mean? But Wo Chen said bye-bye. So that wasn't very fun. Yeah, and then like, you know, I was like, okay, like I'm playing like Oliver, like should you be using like probably a standard team because it's like a, you know, like an established player, and he has like Landorus Therian with Choice Band, which I know isn't like the craziest thing, but is like not something I played against ever in testing. Yeah, just like torn Landorus, Earthquake, and I said, where do my Pokemon go? And then next round I played Pato, who had the like Pheasantipity Gastrodon team, and then like I had like a Sun team, and then it was like on stream versus Whimsicott Terrakion, like I don't even know. Like, so yeah, I think it was a really, really weird tournament for me personally. And I think that it's just a really wide metagame. Like I think I played as many like Florges as I did Ogerpon Wellspring in the tournament, at least on day 1, maybe across the whole thing, to be honest. So yeah, I don't know if that was like typical of everyone's runs, but for me, it was like every round I was like, I don't know what's happening anymore.
I will say EUIC has always felt like the most cursed event I've ever played in. Like
Agreed.
A lot of my day 1s before have been pretty bad results going into this tournament, and I always fight like the non-standard stuff. Like last year, you would have expected Palafin Balance to be everywhere, and I don't think I played a single one. I only played Weather that entire 5 rounds that I played before I dropped. This year, I don't think I had any exception. I'm pretty sure out of any Japan Balance variants, I only played 1. I'm pretty sure out of the 15 rounds that I played, which there were a lot of them, so I was very shocked to not play like most of them. I think general standard, but kind of like fallen off meta stuff. Like I played some of the snow teams. I played a sun team round 1 with Covercloak Venusaur. That was not fun.
Oh man.
And yeah, so overall, like I think this tournament was something I really wanted to say. Consistency was going to be something really important to me this tournament because it's 15 rounds. It's a really long Swiss run if you do make it into day 2. And something I kind of remembered at Vancouver, a lot of my Vancouver losses because I went to Vancouver a few weeks before, and Tornados and Bleakwind was not exactly the best friend at that time, unfortunately. I lost quite a few of the majority of my rounds to Bleakwind Miss, and even the games that I did win was kind of going close because all I needed to hit was like one Bleakwind, and then like it just was not hitting. So I needed something more consistent. So I ended up taking one of the more standardish Japan balance teams. I was also worried, but I did grind it out for like ever since after Vancouver. I made the adjustment with the Gholdengo version, which we saw get number 1 in the global challenge. Worked on it a bit with Eduardo, and yeah, I felt like it was a really good team choice. I felt very comfortable going into it. And I'm really happy that I did make that change because I felt like other than Icicle Crash, which was my only inaccurate move, and maybe like Will-O-Wisp, which I don't really click too often, it just felt like a consistent team. So I felt like that really helped me pilot through a lot of the stranger stuff. And the Gholdengo changes a lot of matchups where like the standard Japan balance might like struggle again sometimes.
Yeah, I think almost every game I lost, I was like, oh, if I had Gholdengo, my life would be so much easier. I think like I thought I was like, oh, this team has safety goggles, Incineroar, Rillaboom, substitute Landorus, like Amoonguss should be fine. I lost to like every Amoonguss I played against because they were all like really good players piloting it. So it wasn't just like your, standard average player using it. And in all of those, I was just like, oh, if I just had Gholdengo over Landorus, like this would be infinitely easier. So I think, yeah, that was a really smart call by you and you, James.
It's so interesting because like we kind of knew this was going to happen just it being Europe, but there's so many Amoonguss in the field. I didn't play against a single one. And in my entire day 1, I didn't play against a single Amoonguss. I played against 2 Iron Hands, one of which had Whirlwind on it. I played against an Articuno and Registeel, or I guess Ninetales and Registeel. Every single team that I played against had something completely different on it, though. So I never played the same archetype twice. And a fun fact, Wolf, I played your opponent that you beat on round 1 in round 2.
Oh, they were pretty good. The Corviknight?
Yeah, and I beat them, so that's cool. But
nice
yeah,
job.
It was a tough team,
That's
though.
a Beastcoast combo, baby. Like
It was cool.
lay up and then dunk.
I got the dunk there. Thank you for the setup. But no, it was really interesting to see the diversity of teams. I felt like I played against a lot of things that I wasn't totally expecting. Like I played against way more Trick Room than I was prepared for, and with bringing the Choice Band Landorus as well as Cornerstone Ogerpon, which turned out to be amazing choices, by the way. Like really happy with the performance that those 2 Pokemon in particular put in. I still played against a bunch of Trick Room, and then I also saw way more rain in the field than I think I was expecting. Like Pelipper Archaludon was back with Rapid Strike Urshifu and that kind of archetype. That was a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, I was going to say really quickly, Alberto had a really cool rain team with Pelipper Urshifu, but without Archaludon, and so it was actually really tough. I played him round 2 of day 2, and like, yeah, like it was actually pretty tough because it was kind of like Chenpao Urshifu, and then I think it was Chenpao Urshifu, like Pelipper, Amoonguss, Incineroar, and I forgot the last one, but yeah, it was like
Gholdengo Dragonite.
Oh, that's right, Gholdengo Dragonite, exactly. So it was like you had the Chenpao Urshifu Dragonite combo, but you also had like Pelipper Urshifu Amoonguss combo, and it was like, yeah, actually really, really difficult. Like I like kind of just barely eked out 2 wins there. Like it was really hard, but it was a cool take on rain.
I was just going to say like 2 different comments. One on Amoonguss. Amoonguss didn't break the top 12 in usage on day 1, but it shot up to, I think, number 7 in day 2, or number 8. So 29.9% of teams had Amoonguss in day 2, but in day 1, Farigiraf was at 16.6%, and so Amoonguss was under that. So I would say I didn't have like the hardest time through day 1, but day 2 it was just like struggled a lot, and it felt like a lot of matches were just like very skewed, and I like had to play like exceptionally well if I wanted a chance to win, and I think a big reason for that was Amoonguss, and so it's interesting to see how many of like the players in day 2 were opting for it. And then, yeah, like talking about Pelipper Archaludon, there were 3 different Pelipper Archaludon teams in top 16, 2 with records that were good enough to make it into, or sorry, all 3 with good enough records to make it into top 8. They just all bubbled out. I actually played against one of them, Roberto from Italy, who got top 8 at Worlds in 2018. He lost his Chien-Pao and still managed to finish in top 16, which is incredible. And I actually feel a little bit bad. I feel like if I just won a few more games, he might have been in the top 8. So I feel bad for tanking his resistance. But yeah, it was interesting to see that even though this was, I feel like, a composition that a lot of people are kind of written off and said there wasn't a lot of potential, like if resistance just went a little bit better for these players, like they could have been in that top 8. And given a shot to like win the entire tournament. And so that was not a trend that I was expecting to see.
A lot of people, myself included, were looking at Sun as a potential archetype to come in and do really, really well. So I did see quite a bit of that. Like Brian Collins in the top 16 played Torkoal. We had a lot of options, I think, with Tornadus, with Sunny Day. That was something that was actually on my team as well. And I thought that was really powerful just to be able to play into some of these Sun teams, rain teams. So that was actually kind of nice. One team I really wanted to point out, though, that I thought was super unique is if you take a look at Sam Danneker's team at 16th, he had 2 different Defiant Pokemon with the Galarian Zapdos as well as the normal base Ogerpon. And I thought that was super unique combination of Pokemon to have on a team. And we're just rounded out in the way that it is, too, with so many unique picks.
So this team is really funny because I was talking to, I think, Marcus about this team because, okay, Defiant Galarian Zapdos, Defiant also on the Ogerpon regular, Clear Amulet Excalibur, and then you have not only 3 special attackers, but 3 special attackers who, like, are good into Incineroar. Like, you have Landorus with Earth Power, Heatran with Earth Power. Iron Metal doesn't have Hydro Pump, but it does have Encore, so you can, like, you can stop Fake Out, basically. And despite this, like Marcus was like, oh yeah, like this whole team is like, to me, it looks like it's designed to beat Incineroar. I was looking at it and I was like, I might still bring Incineroar into this. Like Incineroar is so good that even against this team, I think I might bring it. And I just think that's really funny because this is like the least Incineroar friendly team of all time, I think.
You know what's actually really funny about Incineroar? I was going through some of the day 2 usage, and I'm not done looking at all the team sheets yet. But out of the 52 that I've combed over, 5 of the Incineroar had Shookaberry.
Yeah, I played versus Alex, and it made it hard.
I think it makes sense, right? Like if you think about the items it wants to use, you normally see like Citrus Berry or Goggles. Like I think a lot of people were dropping Goggles when they had Gholdengo on the balanced teams, and because it just gives you a much easier time into Amoonguss. So then it's like, yeah, I think Shuka is really nice because like Landorus Incarnate usage was just so high and everyone's been using it. And so having a way to just like guaranteed survive an attack and then pivot out afterwards, I think makes it a lot harder for Lander because most people are just like, oh, okay, my way of dealing with Incineroar is just to Earth Power it. So that means that you can survive without also having to commit an Assault Vest. You can still go for Parting Shot.
Yeah, and the Gholdengo adding a 3rd ground weakness and you don't have ground immunities on that team. Like Shookaberry was definitely a change that like I think like most of the Incineroars did really appreciate, who were running the Gholdengo especially just enjoyed having. Like it didn't come up to me because I think I only played like 2 Landorus Incarnates, but like it did help me live like a Helping Hand Blood Moon or Power on a Switch. So it's a really good item for the cases. And yeah, I just wouldn't have it any other way.
I think it makes sense too because like if you have Incineroar in front of Landorus, it's a really dangerous guessing game because you want to just switch out there a lot of the time, but then if they sub, you like lose so much momentum or like it can be so dangerous. So you'd like to Parting Shot them, but then if they Earth Power and you just lose Incineroar right away, it's like that didn't go very well, right? And so with the Shookaberry, you can go for Parting Shot or Knockoff into the Landorus with a lot more safety, and you're not forced like. On my team, often if I ended up out of position versus Landorus, I would be forced to Terra Incineroar. It's part of the reason I ran Terra Grass to get that ground resistance. But I mean, if you don't have to commit the Terra and can instead use your item, then that I think has a lot of value. So it makes sense, I think.
I think one team I really want to talk about, which we've been talking about like some of the cool like takes on this tournament, but I really do think that Nils, who didn't end up winning the event, had like a brilliant adjustment. Like I think his team was really well designed to help out against the standard Japan balance and general teams that were going on at the moment. And I think the Flame Orb Ursaluna was just really strong in this tournament for him. And we saw like a lot of different adjustments from Pokemon we would normally see, like the Terra flying onto Porygon too. So you actually have a ground immunity, so you can actually go for Earthquake alongside with the Ursaluna. And the very, very fast Incineroar, I actually believe it was max speed Incineroar on this team. And we saw the Incineroar like outrun a Gholdengo. And I think it was just incredible because even though you don't have as much bulk with the Incineroar, the ways you can pivot out in the team into the Ursaluna, the way that you could outspeed Riolabooms outside of Trick Room and just Flare Blitzes immediately for heavy damage, which is a big threat to Ursaluna, and the Rapid Strike Urshifu, this bulky special attack booster sub Flutter Mane. I mean, there's a lot of ways that he could just force ways to play around. Like the way that you would be trying to handle this team is, maybe you expect just a standard Incineroar Porygon 2, a fast fake out, maybe a Parting Shot, but Nils was able to really capitalize with the substitute Flutter Mane mind games as well as like went to set up the Trick Room because he didn't have to immediately.
It was super cool watching that set as well. I didn't get a chance to see the full thing, but oh, man, the way that Nils plays, like It was kind of spectacular. Like, I remember in particular this one turn where he ended up sporing the Ogerpon that Tim Terra'd. I like lost it. I was in a train heading towards the airport and I'm like, no way did he just do that. And I think even though the matchup looked still a little bit skewed towards Nils, he did have a favorable matchup versus what Tim was playing. I think it was the way that Nils played it made it super difficult for Tim to ever find an edge in that finals match. So just like major credit to Nils. I think it's been a long time coming for him as a player as well to get a major win like this.
Full disclosure, I am a bit of a Nils fanboy. I think that he is one of the greatest Pokemon players of all time. And when people talk about like the people who are the greatest, I feel like they often forget about him. I played him for the first time at 2017 Worlds. He was the player who eliminated me, and he played so incredibly well. Like, it was like a lot of similar. I think we both had Mimilax, as I recall, and he just like played so well. And so I kind of ever since then have had my eye on him. And like, I think it was top 8 Worlds 2017, top 4 2018, or maybe the finishes are like reversed. But he got like 2 incredible top cut finishes back to back years. He won Richmond Regionals. Actually, I played him in top 4 there. He beat me there as well. I think I have 1 set win somewhere against him. So I'm not completely unbeaten, but yeah, like I think he's just an incredible player. And actually, I really disagree. I think that the matchup was heavily in Tim's favor, but Nils played so well, like it just didn't look that way. Like there was a point in game 2 where Nils had his Incineroar on the field, and then Ogerpon came in. I was like, oh, Ogerpon can KO literally all these Pokemon because it has Stomping Tantrum. And like there was a point where like Stomping Tantrum was double power, and like the only ways for Nils to get around it were like to protect correctly or like burn a Terra in the hopes of like surviving a move. But yeah, like it didn't, like he like Nils just played super well. But there was, if you look back at the set, as I recall, there was a string of turns where it was like Nils has to like protect, switch it again with the other slot again, and like maybe do a move, and then like a third kind of defensive play there, and then only then was he able to make a read to get back into position. But like once he had the lead, he was really good at maintaining it. But yeah, I think that actually, like Nils just played so incredibly well that I think it looked better than it actually was in reality. That's my take, at least.
It was one of the most, I want to say like dominant finals, just because it didn't feel like Nils got a single turn wrong, which was crazy. His opponent Tim making it all the way to the finals, like what a Cinderella run it was, right? And I think it was tough for Tim because essentially he needed to like at some point make like an aggressive prediction, right? Something like, oh, I should just fire Terra, Ogerpon, and then go for like Ivy Cudgel into the Incineroar slot. And it's a testament to Nils' team because it's hard to cover for every single option, right? Like that Ghost Terra turn in game 1 is the one that stands out the most to me. One thing, by the way, about Nils' team is that you have these like ultra defensive Pokemon like Porygon 2, Amoonguss, and like Incineroar. Those are generally seen as defensive, but like they do a lot of damage, right? Like Nils was sludge bombing consistently with Amoonguss. Incineroar, as James called out, was actually a faster variant, and so it was attacking more often. By the way, the upside of using like a faster Incineroar is that when you set up Trick Room, like your opponent's Incineroar is going to be faster than yours, right? And so like they parting shot and then you parting shot after they switch out, for example. So I think that was really clever. It also means you have faster fake out, right? Which can help in the lead matchup. But yeah, it's like Nils has these ultra bulky Pokemon can do a lot of damage. And I think I was watching the finals and I was like, man, I don't think Nils has gotten like a single turn incorrectly. He also made a big adjustment, right? He had the Trick Room mode in game 1 and then dropped that and went with like Urshifu in game 2. And it was a tough spot, I think, for both players. Nils managed to call multiple turns correctly, which was so impressive. But, you know, I think it was tough for Tim because I think in a lot of those spots, it's like there's just so many options Nils could go for. It's like, how do you figure out what the right prediction to go for is, right? Especially with the plays that Nils was going for in game 1. I thought the matchup was slightly more favored towards Nils, but it was scary because I think in game 2, like that position Wolfe mentioned, like once it was Flutter plus Ogerpon, I was like, oh, this actually looks really scary. If you get one good read, like I think you could just snowball the game out of control. And a big reason for that is because there wasn't Trick Room in game 2. So like there was no threat of Porygon 2 setting up Trick Room at any point. And because Nils had committed to the Scarf Urshifu, like one thing that you're vulnerable to is just Icy Wind from Booster Flutter Mane into, Grass type attack to just knock out the Urshifu. So I think, yeah, because Nils had decided to try to adapt a little bit, it might have actually made things a little bit more tricky for him in game 2, but he found like that string of plays where it was just switch after switch after switch and then managed to secure the win. But yeah, I mean, he's a phenomenal player. And I think this team was also like such a smart call for this entire tournament. Like I think Ursaluna is one of the hardest teams or hardest Pokemon for these balanced teams to go up against. I also really like Tim's team, though. I think like Fire Ogerpon, we haven't talked about that, but it had a huge performance in this event, right? Like there were, I think, 3 different Fire Ogerpons in top 8 alone. And for a while, it seemed like Water Ogerpon had taken over. Everyone's talking about that. only one water pond in the top 8. I think people once again realize like, oh my god, Fire Ogre Pond with Booster Flutter next to it, like it just does so much damage. It can knock things out so quickly. So yeah. But it's like Nils' plays in the finals were crazy. Like that Ghost Terra Spore play in particular, like I think there were so many plays he could have made in that position, but he just had the conviction to go for it. And it felt like as soon as that happened, the game was just over.
Just really quickly, one last thing about the matchup that I think is worth mentioning is that Tim had that booster speed taunt Flutter. And if you look at Nils' team, Porygon 2 and Amoonguss really don't want to be taunted. Incineroar, you can also stop Parting Shot with Taunt, which if you pair it with Intimidate is really good. And then Speed Boost or Special Attack Booster Flutter and Scarf Urshifu both don't want to get Icy Winded. You know what I mean? Like I think like before Nils could even play the rest of the game, he had to find a way around like the Taunt Flutter, but the Taunt Flutter just matched up so well into all 6 of his Pokemon, I think, with like both Taunt and Icy Wind. So yeah, that was another thing that like I think Nils didn't make the Flutter look super good because he just dealt with it right away, but like I think that it could have been a much bigger factor if it had been allowed to kind of stick around for longer.
Yeah, the first 2 turns were a masterclass.
The way he dealt with it was literally like, oh, let me bait taunt out, switch into Ursaluna, and then just headlong rush it when Flutter could have protected in that position and there could have been a pivot. So I think, yeah, it's like the plays that Tim made, they work probably against like 99% of players that are using the team that Nils is using, but he just, happened to go up against Nils who like had a very clear sense. Like I was thinking, that game 1 could look really differently if like Flutter just decides to Moonblast turn 1 saying, okay, I have taunt. There's no way you're going to bother even Trick Rooming, right? And then the next turn you can like Moonblast, Flutter Blitz, double up onto the Ursa slot. But yeah, Nils just made like back-to-back phenomenal calls and eliminates Flutter immediately, manages to get Ursaluna into a really nice spot without it taking any damage, which is kind of the dream as well. But yeah, I don't know. Like I think Ursaluna is a Pokemon people were sleeping on for a while, so it's really cool to see it claim a win. If you look at the top teams from this event, by the way, like there aren't that many other people using Ursaluna. I'm scrolling through like top 32, for example. I think there's only 2 other Ursalunas, like one at 21st place here, one at 32nd place. So it's not like a Pokemon that a lot of people were building around, and it's not something that was like super common in the meta either. And part of it is because it's not the easiest Pokemon to use, right? Even though it's like, oh yeah, you just have these super strong attacks, like playing the dancing game between clicking like normal type attacks versus ground type attacks can be really challenging. And with Ursaluna, often the problem is that like it really needs Trick Room in order to kind of win games, but 1 good or 2 good defensive turns against it, and it just feels like really bad, right? But I think, this like composition with Porygon 2 in particular, I really love. And like James called out, that Flying Terra is really cool because then like Porygon 2 also just does a lot of damage as well. So then to have 2 things out on the field that are bulky, outspeeding you, and also dealing a lot of damage makes it so much tougher to fight against.
Something about the Flying Terra I also really like on the Porygon is that I think for a long time in this metagame, we've looked at stab flying type damage as really impactful. And so Porygon, sometimes you're in a position where you're actually getting an attack boost from the download instead. And think about all those Assault Vest Real Boom that might not want to necessarily be on the receiving end of that one. I think you have a lot of flexibility there in terms of where you position the Porygon to take advantage of something like that Terraflying Terra Blast. And the other thing about the Ursaluna that I do think made it really strong in this meta, and especially in a European region, is there were so many Amoonguss running around as specifically an answer to Trick Room that you have Flame Orb, you're burned. You actually can't get put to sleep. And so I think that's another way to really mitigate the impact that an Amoonguss can have as an answer in a Trick Room matchup like that.
Great point. Yeah, I think the Flame War burn is super impactful.
Also, just wanted to give like a quick shout out to like a lot of the team compositions overall. We saw like a few techs, like for instance, Tim, who got 2nd place, running the no Flare Blitz on the Incineroar since he did have the Ogre Pond, running the knockoff and Willis, which gives a utility. You can knock off opposing Raging Bolts, and we saw that really come into play against Poke Alex in the top 4 set because it allows you to win that Raging Bolt mirror if you do get down to a 1v1 position. So I thought that was a cool adjustment. Jory, who ended up getting 3rd, I believe, if that's how you pronounce his name, the bulky Landorus incarnate form, kind of a version we saw the Scott get, I believe, top 4 at Vancouver with. We also see Aurelian getting the top 8. He has had a phenomenal run. I think he ran it back with his exact same team that he got 2nd place, almost winning undefeated. I forgot which regional it was, but really impressive there. We saw the one Tinglu Dundozo composition get 6th place that was able to have a really cool tech in Scale Shot Loaded Dice Dragonite, which I thought was like a really unique pick right there, alongside Gholdengo, which you don't see on that composition, but we saw it a little bit there. And yeah, I think we just saw like a lot of general, like overall solid teams, solid compositions that you were just expecting for this point in the meta, because this is basically near the end of Regulation F, and I thought it was just really cool to see like how accumulated. And also shout outs to the guy who got 25th with the Choice Specs Galarian Moltres Okidogi team. I thought that was like a really sick team as well.
I also want to mention Pokey Alex's team, or Alex Gomez's team, because it was like kind of a a lot of standard Pokemon, like a more standard composition, but the specific choices he made it really difficult. I lost to him because in part he had Terra Fire or Urshifu Rapid Strike with Mystic Water, Terra Fire, Clear Amulet, Chen Pao, and then the Booster Energy Calm Mind Bolt, which we do not see very often. Like I'd never even experienced that before, and it hit so hard at +1, even a +0 was doing tons of damage.
Good amount of team diversity within the top 8. Okidogi also making top 8 is so cool to see. This set had Drain Punch, Gunk Shot, Knockoff, Upper Hand with Water Terra. And so, yeah, I think it's a Pokemon that's been kind of underplayed, especially with how much Incineroar is being used. And so it's really cool to see that make an appearance. Honestly, the teams 9 through 16 are really cool, right? We have like 3 different Pelipper Archaludon teams. We have Brian Collins, who used a hard Trick Room team with Smeargle. We had that, really crazy team with Grass Ogerpon and Galarian Zapdos as well. 2013 World Champion Arashi Madi brought a team with Clefairy. His team looks standard in terms of Pokemon, but also a lot of crazy techs like Ice Terra, Chien-Pao, for example, Focus Energy, Fire Pond, Ice Punch on Urshifu. And then we have an Iron Boulder here at 30th place as well, which I think is really, really sick. I would not have bet money on Iron Boulder winning money from a premiere event this season. And so I think that's really cool. This was a choice band set with Mighty Cleave, Zen Headbutt, Close Combat, and Mega Horn. And so, yeah, I think like the format at this point was just so wide open. There were so many things like could do well. And I think a lot of these, all the teams in the top 8 make so much sense to me, where it's like they already are proven strategies, but then have a couple of little extra techs like get them over the edge, for example. Team Ludozo, by the way, I think honestly, I see a lot in day 2 as well. I had played against a couple, and it's just something that I think is really hard to deal with in a best of 3 set, because it's like Team Ludozo is this like passive lead, but can also just be really disruptive, but then they can mix up and just go like Gouging Fire, or they could just go Chien-Pao Dragonite. It's really difficult to like cover for all of these options. And so, yeah, it feels like a fitting, not conclusion, but yeah, we've got a month left of this format, and I do think let a lot of these teams feel like kind of the final form teams of this format.
So as a conclusion, I guess I'll ask all of you, what is the one lesson you took away from this tournament?
I'd say Amoonguss is so back. I actually, so like
Don't sleep on Amoonguss.
The standard Calm Mind Fairy Terra Raging Bolt felt so bad into the top players in day 2. And that's not surprising because like, everyone's known about this Pokemon for a while and like you should be prepared for it. But it's like my Raging Bolt actually felt like so much of a liability in all the games I was bringing it in, because like I said, I went up against like multiple Fairy Terra Clear Smog Amoongusses. It's such a counter, right? Because like even Fairy Terra alone's a disaster. Clear Smog's even worse, right? Because like one of the approaches you sometimes can take is like, okay, like you can Fairy Terra, you can put me to sleep, but then I'll eventually KO your Amoonguss, and you still have to deal with Raging Bolt at some point. But with Clear Smog, like Raging Bolt just feels so much worse. And yeah, like Amoonguss presence was just everywhere. That's also why I'm not surprised to see this Booster Energy Raging Bolt on the Calm Mind sets do a little bit better than like the traditional leftover set, because at least you like can just dish out more damage immediately. But yeah, my main takeaway was like Amoonguss is so back, because I had played so many in day 2, and I'd also actually played against a Bug Terra Raging Bolt, which I thought was really interesting, and it had like substitute Water Urshifu next to it, so it was like,
oh, I played that guy too, actually.
Yeah, and I lost to it because I was like, I don't win. I thought I would win the Raging Bolt Mirror because I was like, well, I'm Fairy Terra, surely. But then the sub Urshifu was actually fascinating as well, because like I was like, oh, Thunderclap, nope, you just substitute. I can Dragon Pulse you, sure, but then like you slowly and it had Thunderbolt as well, so you could just slowly Thunderbolt into Fairy Terra Bolt. So yeah, I like a lot of text that like you can take these standard Pokemon, I guess, is my second main takeaway.
Fun fact, when I played against him, I thought my Bolt just won because I was setting up for game 1. Then he doubled my Raging Bolt, KO'd it, and then I looked at the team sheet because I saw Thunderbolt and I read it as Thunderclap, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Still won the set though and won that game, but yeah, make sure you read the team sheet, kids.
Maybe not new news, but Terra Bug Hat is still the best Terra hat in the entire game. I'm still a firm believer of that. So, but I think the main takeaway for me is that Chien-Pao is so back. I knew it was already creeping up in usage, taking a look at some of the more recent tournaments that we had, but knowing how much it fell off when Farigiraf was on the rise, Wolf, I think we can all thank you for that happening after Charlotte and Knoxville. But like Chien-Pao Dragonite is so back as an archetype, and if you take a look at the results, I think you'll probably see why.
Yeah, I think my main takeaway is that like it's more of a personal thing, but I really want to think about how can I be prepared for things that I haven't prepared against, because this tournament was a lot of like, hey Wolf, hold this, hey Wolf, hold this, hey Wolf, hold this, hey Wolf, do you know what this Pokemon does? And like I had practiced and I thought that I was prepared for this, but I wasn't prepared for 7 rounds of it day one, and I felt kind of mental energy that it took to figure out each of these different Pokemon, and like yeah, it was really difficult for me. So this was a really wide tournament, and I think it's like, for me, it's like the lesson I learned is I need to be better prepared against things that I haven't prepared against. You know what I mean? And have more dedicated plans against more, like volatile things. So yeah.
All right, and I think for me, I don't know. I think there were just like a few meta things that I just learned. Incineroar was here, still remains on the top. Gholdengo just made it rain throughout this entire tournament. It actually really came back high in usage after it kind of dropped after Toller did win the regional. We didn't see it nearly as much afterward, but then it just really came back strong in this tournament. King Gambit usage kind of fell off. The King has fallen because really, I think its highest place was like 40 something. So yeah, it didn't exactly have a strong performance there. And Heatran and Volcarona are still pretty decent as fire types format, but I think that's going to be it for us at Beastcoast Pokemon. Any last words, everyone?
Yeah, I'd say we are wrapping the end of this format, so I'm curious what you all have to say about it. Did you like playing it? Is anyone playing in Orlando? Let us know your thoughts. I think it's been a fun format. I can't say it's been my favorite, but I think it's cool that we've had it for a few months and we see so many new things continue to rise up, right? Like Ursaluna now winning a tournament, Articuno winning a tournament a while back, and so eager to see how it all concludes in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, curious on what you, the viewers, have to say about it.
I think I'm the only one here playing Orlando, huh?
Okay, yeah, James, let us know after Orlando.
Well, I'm thinking about going actually.
Oh, I think we need a run back, Wolf.
Heck yeah.
I think we need a run back. But for me, I think laddering or practicing for events has been really stressful. I think this was the most stressful tournament to prep for in general. There were so many different options to cover for. You know, the tools are just really oppressive sometimes. Urshifu's, Raging Bolt, like Landorus Eye, they're Pokemon that do really heavy damage. But overall, I had fun the past weekend. Like, I really did enjoy playing. I felt my play was like really high up to my standard, and I was really enjoying it. So even though I wasn't a huge fan of this regulation in general, like I had a lot of fun playing it, at least at the events that I did attend. So I don't think it was too bad, but we'll see how my opinion is after Reg G finishes up or starts, because that one I'm not too sure about.
I think we all have hesitations about how Reg G might go, but I think for me, Reg F was probably one of the healthiest metas we've ever had for regulation in Scarlet and Violet. So I really enjoyed playing it, and I also really enjoyed watching it as a viewer. But it's no Reg A, and I'm forever going to wonder just what could have happened if we had the Paldea and Dex format for even a little bit longer.
It would have been nice. Now we get to go play Caloric Shadow, Astro Barrage, Terrapagos, Terrastar Storm. Yay, look forward to that.
Wildcard stocks are up. All right, I think that's going to be it for us at Beastcoast Pokemon. Aaron, anything?
That's it, guys. Yeah, we are going to be back for some... I mean, Reg G is going to be crazy, so we're going to have plenty of coverage of that format once we finish off this format. But thanks as always for joining us, and it was really cool for all of us to be at the largest tournament, the new largest tournament of all time. That record is just constantly being broken, so I wouldn't be surprised.
My title! I lost it!
I wouldn't be surprised if you told me next year, or even maybe a special event later on this year breaks that new title. But it's amazing to see how many people are playing and watching the game. So thanks to you all for tuning in, for attending these events, and we'll see you soon.